And again, it's as easy as tracing something. Because once you start picking up your darker pencils, you don't have to be a slave to what you've already put down. You can look at your reference, find your spot that you want to draw, and draw it correctly looking at the reference because you already know where it goes. It's as easy as tracing. Of course, a lot of this stuff, you know, knowing your anatomy help. Obviously, I already kind of know that stuff, so it's one of those things, I guess, that make it sort of look easier for me. It's just because I sort of already know where muscles go and how they connect, and that those, like I was saying before, those rhythm lines sort of, there's sort of a correlation on how things work together, how they connect up. Like on another video, I talked about how this line of your back usually correlates right up into your shoulder, so that's that shoulder line. I don't even think I was really thinking about that when I first drew this line. I was more looking at the reference, but look at that, it works, doesn't it? Maybe if I had started down here, I would have already got that line, but instead I'm working from a different place on the drawing. Again, that's just because I'm roughing, trying to get things placed correctly. Something I didn't do that I probably should have done. You always got to think about the shoulder line and the hip line. Sometimes if you forget to do that, you'll start roughing things out and getting things done, and you've got this basic torso shape in there, you've got a lot of things set out, and you'll realize that the head's too low, everything is starting to be off, and the whole reason that things are off is because you didn't place your shoulders correctly. You didn't have that angle between one shoulder and the other shoulder correctly. Start drawing the other shoulder down here, and then start doing the head and everything is getting stop working out for you. I go, why the hell isn't it working right? So it's one of those things you always got to be sort of mindful of. And also, you know, sometimes you get in the habit and you forget to measure things that are far apart, which is actually very important to do, because your whole thing will be thrown off again. You might have to do some erasing and starting over, and I always suggest erasing. Don't be a slave to what you've got down thinking it's all perfect, because it obviously isn't, right? So erase, build up your confidence in what you're doing, and erase if you need to erase. Draw it again. I mean, drawing something again ain't gonna make you a worse drawer. Let's see, so like this angle on the back of the head, I'm looking at the reference and I can see that, you know, it lines up with this shoulder, which is sort of like a close reference, but I need to like bring it through and say, oh, where does this match up to? And it basically matches up to this leg angle, which I might have a little off here. But, you know, measuring things from that are further apart on the drawing is also really important, so don't forget to do that from time to time. Or just another way of putting it is remembering to back away from your artwork. You know, sometimes you gotta get in the habit of sort of taking a step back and looking at it. It's kind of funny, you know, people give that advice, I gotta give that advice, but, you know, depending on how I'm working, I'm not usually working on an easel. I'm not, you know, gonna stop what I'm doing and stand up and back away. You gotta sort of train yourself to learn how to step back from what you're doing without actually stepping back. You know, just like anything else in art, you're training your brain to do these tricks for you. But maybe you have to do it the old-fashioned way in order to learn, huh? Take a step back, quit what you're doing, and step back from your artwork. I can see negative space in the neck. There's this whole big shape here that's kind of got this odd little corners and things that go between the jaw and the ear. or the neck here. That whole thing, I'm actually drawing the shape. I'm not drawing the jaw and the neck, you know, or maybe I'm just kind of doing it at the same time. But that's what I was doing, is looking at my reference and spotting that shape, and then okay, I can draw that shape, and I'm just sort of putting it in place of everything else. And I sort of drew this earlier, just kind of to remind myself. That's another shape I sort of saw, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was, but once I start rendering and stuff, I can actually see that, because I have a shadow here on this part of the chest, it makes this diamond shape where I'm getting shadow on one portion of it and light on another portion. This is actually like white light, and it's making this weird shape that I see, which is actually, you know, a big pattern of reflected light and shadows and stuff going on there. So it's not really a shape that's easy to see if you're thinking about, you know, muscles, you know, oh, that ain't the chest, that ain't the rib cage, that ain't, you know, this or that. It's more of just like a shape that I picked out of the ether here, of the reference that I'm looking at. And I got the trapezius muscle here. I guess I maybe should be naming off some of the muscles and how I'm seeing them and stuff. There's sort of the brachialis I can kind of see from this angle here. And bicep. Now the bicep sort of ties into the chest. This shape again here, this was sort of a shadow actually. I wasn't really drawing the shape of the muscle as much as I was drawing the shape of the shadow I see. I already kind of know the shape of the muscle. And that's another, the form of the shoulder. The shoulder is made up of different parts or sections, and so just like the rest of the body, how this arm is in front of the torso and this next arm is going to be behind the torso, the shoulder can work like that too. And because of that, we can see these relations of lines, like I was talking about before. One of the relations of basic relations of lines is that it's just two curves where one curve is actually moving behind the other curve, so we're not continuing through the curve. That's another one of those really super simple, boiled down how lines work in nature. When you're looking at a line, you'll see that, and you'll see that, you know, and you'll see that, and you'll rarely see, you know, X's and stuff. Everything just sort of matched up because I sort of know there's like a rhythm to how everything is working. This human body is a spring. It's moving, it has momentum and weight, but it's also a spring. It's got energy to it, it's got rhythms flowing and going on. This forearm is matching this angle of the leg. This leg is going to match this forearm up here. This part of the arm is matching this also. And so I guess we have that same relation of this forearm is matching this angle of this arm. You have that rhythm of energy, how it's all working up here as well as down here. Everything works together. It's elegant. So I'm paying attention to the angle, and I'm paying attention to the negative space around it. I'll start at the bottom because that might be what you can actually see on the camera here. So I'm paying attention of the angle, and I'm paying attention to the negative space that's actually going on. This whole shape here is black. This whole shape, I can see this part of the shape. That's the negative space. And I already know that, you know, the basic shapes of the arms and sort of this rhythms of it. And I can also measure, just think of a line that's not there and put a straight line over, and sort of know about where the very top of, say, his hand would be. I sort of spent too much time not judging the distance between what's going on up here and what's going on down here, so it's a little closer to the chest than I had it drawn. This leg looks a little too small to me, so I've got to be doing some fixing, I think. It's just not thick enough. In order to show how much weight is being carried by a leg, especially if it's bent like this and there's weight on it, it's got to look thick. So, those are my basic lessons, sort of how I see things. There's so many different things I look for and so many different modes I switch between when I'm drawing, how I'm seeing things, whether I'm looking for a shape, say this big shape or this shape, or if I'm the negative space in between shapes as a shape, or measuring farther away things, say like where the ear is it lined up with, you know, this part of the crotch area? Yes. And where this elbow is, that about where that heel is? Yes. And more obviously, closer distance things are relative, of course. When you're drawing something, that's how you're drawing it, probably, is just thinking, how does this line relate to this line? But the overlying logic, how I think when I'm drawing things, besides knowing anatomy and how certain things work, is the rhythms of how things work through other things. Say this whole angle, this whole shape, you could put this leg lines up with this shape of the torso, and any little point on your drawing, say I'm thinking, just looking at the reference, this line lines up with his chin too, so this arm is going to go straight to his chin, and where that stuff is, that lined up correctly, even though that's not what I was thinking when I was putting that chin in place. Probably I was probably lining up other ways, but there's a definite correlation, a definite rhythm that of the way things work with the human body, that, oh, this lines up this way. So you can stop what you're doing and look at your drawing and say, is this playing through? Is the energy moving, you know, that way? And the real trick is, like I was talking about before, it's like you're tracing, so don't be a slave. Now that you've got these things sort of where you're at, now that I picked up my other pencil, say this is a HB here, take a second look, take a second guess on how these things are working out, and maybe I can fix little problems that I had when I was roughing. I just have to take that extra care and think about it, and you know, you should definitely be doing that anyway. It's the same as, say, inking. I'm basically inking what I'm doing. I'm just inking with a different tool. I'm inking with a pencil, since, you know, these are just tools to me. This is a chisel. Like I'm looking here, I was thinking that these lines, you know, that they correlate with, you know, since it's like, is this line straight with this line? And I just wasn't noticing, and I can look at my reference and see that that's not the case at all. I just had it a little wrong. So in order to sort of re-emphasize that, I can sort of change the line to say it's more, you know, bisected by this. It's not parallel with it.